We are Memphis Wrestling. Join us live. Sunday, May 28th is our next free watch party at Dave & Buster's. Watch AEW Double or Nothing with us. It's free. That's Dave & Buster's in Memphis. Sunday, June 4th is our next live TV taping at the Wrestle Center. Experience the stars of Memphis Wrestling live. June 25th is on sale soon. Saturday, July 1st, watch WWE Money in the Bank with us. It's free at Dave & Buster's in Memphis. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours right now at championshipwrestlingmemphis.com.
Like to welcome ArizonaBayCoffee.com. That's ArizonaBayCoffee.com as a sponsor of Shootin The Shiznit. That's right. We now have a coffee blend on ArizonaBayCoffee.com. Morning Shiznit is a medium roast coffee that is designed to get you up and moving early in the morning. That's right. Before you do anything else, you will need your morning shiznit. After the first cup or your last cup of the day, remember that you make sure to say, love my mama. Go to ArizonaBayCoffee.com today. Free shipping to all listeners at STSPod.club. Hey, just a quick reminder, subscribe for $5, $7, or $10 at www.patreon.com/Shootin The Shiznit without a G. That's right, Shootin The Shiznit without a G. This episode is also brought to you by SpunkLube.com. Remember, when you're getting funky like a monkey, if you know what I mean, use Spunky. That's right. Go to www.spunklube.com and tell them STSPod sent you. We can all help prevent suicide. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline provides 24/7 free and confidential support for people in distress, and also prevention and crisis resources for you and your loved ones. Call 1-800-273-8255. Remember, all episodes Memphis in May. Go to STSPod.club. Be there.
Shootin the Shiznit, Shootin the Shiznit, best little wrestling podcast in the business. Your host BT, and all his guests. You'll never know who he'll have next. Shootin the Shiznit, Shootin the Shiznit, best little wrestling podcast in the business. Shootin the Shiznit.
All right, we're live for 304 Studios in Jonesboro, Arkansas. This is an STSPod.club production, or production, like I like to say. I'm BT, and right over there, well, it says Chainsaw Tony, but I know him better as Tony Myers. How are you, Tony?
I'm better now. I'm talking to you. We finally made it. Either that or you ran out of people to interview and you got me. So
I'm going to tell that story. Look, real quick, Patreon, join Patreon. We're doing a special Memphis in May. Oh, I'm sorry. All episodes Memphis in May. I got to do that so I don't get sued. And Tony Myers is joining me, but Patreon, you may get some extra questions, some extra minutes of Tony and I talking, and also all the other Memphis wrestling stuff that we do. There's at least 30 minutes almost on every show. So join Patreon. It's STSPod.club. And in the right-hand corner, you have link of all links. Now, Tony, let me tell this story real quick. What I have been telling Tony ever since I started this podcast, hey, I'm going to get you on the podcast. And then I used to tell you, when you get back from Japan, I'm going to get you on the podcast. So it became a running joke that I was going to get him on the podcast. And then I sent him a message. I said, you ready to come on the podcast? This was like a year and a half ago. And you said, oh, I guess you ran out of gas. What you just said just then. Did you run out of people? And I was like, no. And this Memphis in May is our 6th annual. So I said, well, I might as well quit doing the rib there and tell you I'll bring you on. But I'm bringing you on. I don't know. There's going to be some people out here that know everything. Oh, I know Tony. I did this with Tony, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of people, and I'm going to start with just your childhood, don't know anything about Tony Myers, and some of the stuff I don't know. So that's the reason I'm asking. And as the title of the flagship show, we are just shooting the shiznit. So how did you start becoming a fan? And me and you met in Memphis, but tell the story, where you're from and who was you following? What wrestling was you watching as a kid?
Born and raised in Jersey, and collected a lot of wrestling magazines growing up. And it just became, you discover the different territories and everything, especially in the back of those old Wrestling Eye magazines. And some of the fans around might magazine, what in the world? But they had so many different printing companies. It wasn't just the Stan West and Bill Apter magazines. It was just magazines from, it seemed like in the mid and to the late 80s. There was a plethora of new magazines that came up, and some of them patterned after Dave Meltzer's newsletters. It was just, I guess they were trying to cover the whole entire gamut of the pro wrestling magazine market that they were trying to corner. But I skipped to the back of those magazines, and I would read in the pages back there that you could actually swap VHS and trade video cassettes with people. And there was people from all these different regions of here in the United States. There's even people overseas, and you could get their local wrestling too. So I started swapping all kinds of VHS, and eventually, Rich Mancuso had 66 WFAN out of New York City, and he had a wrestling talk show on there. It was late Saturday nights. Devon Dudley used to call in all the time. A bunch of us did that wound up becoming wrestlers. And, so between those two things right there, I just started amassing a ginormous, as you can see to this day, VHS DVD collection. And
what is that, man? Come on, tell me what the VHS is. That's I talk about that all the time, and we talked with a local guy on Tuesday, and he was talking about, I didn't do VHS trading like you did, BT. And I will, I guess the statute of limitations is gone for this, but when I was in college, I was taking donations for those tapes. I had 6 VHSs going at all times. You know how that feels. And I did a lot of trading. And if it wasn't for the trading, I would have never saw anything. But what was you watching on local television? Who were your favorites there?
Oh, the WWF was always, that was always the kingpin. That was always the number one. But by the time cable TV rolled around, we're getting NWA and getting several other promotions too. But it was just a little of everything. To me, it all fell into the same umbrella of wrestling. And then you would discover the local video store. I would rent. Oh man, Johnny Legend. He produced a lot of the old Memphis territory stuff, and they did music videos with that. And so, then I stumbled upon Memphis Wrestling, and I just got hooked on it. And I said, who are these people? What are these angles? And it was just so wacky and so bizarre. And it was like nothing I had ever seen before. The angles were a mile a
You're
minute.
so right there, because if you think WWF at the time compared to Memphis Wrestling, it's like you just stepped in Bizarro world, because it's a total different product. It's not something like now you can watch on YouTube, whatever you want to watch, but it was something that was so different. And you becoming a fan real quick of those guys, right?
Yeah, and as time went on, you find out that this guy was somebody else in a different territory, and you know, I would meet local fans at the matches that I went to, any independent that I could go to. I was like, well, this guy, maybe I'll see some guys that used to be somebody else in one of those other territories, but you knew it was mostly guys hanging on to their glory that were still wrestling. We got so lucky from the local independents around here that we got to see so many guys, so many big name wrestlers, and eventually it all coincided with they needed somebody to help set up the ring. If you wanted it bad enough, you knew you could break into the independents. You would just have to go to shows that were so indie, that were so bad, or that was needing help so bad that they, hey kid, stick this mask on your head, or kid, collect the people's jackets, or ring this timekeeper's bell, or whatever. But kind of getting ahead of things.
Is that where you actually trained the first time and actually had matches up there first before you actually
it was
had
up
any
here.
stuff?
John Arezzi's conventions, they would do them at the Royce Motel, usually in the summertime, and that would be the ultimate collection of people. The names I could drop that went to those, just as fans at the time. Blue Meanie would go to all those things. So the guy that became Sign Guy Dudley, Joel Gertner. I met Joel doing just Lower East Side Wrestling, Manhattan. The two of us we were hardly teenagers, but we kept running into each other. And then next thing I knew, we're swapping information and all that stuff. And he put it together. He was like, hey, you're the guy that runs that Cactus Jack fan club. And this is 88, 89, when Foley was barely getting a name for himself out there. And, it was a whole bunch of us. I ran that fan club at the time. Foley had wanted us to change the name of it to the Cactus Jack Appreciation Society, and now that rings a bell with some of the modern fans of Chris Jericho.
Jericho, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if you wanted it bad enough, even in reading those magazines, you would see wrestling schools advertised just everywhere. It just felt like everybody had a wrestling school, but the Monster Factory kept coming up, and I knew where Flemington was. So, eventually I stumbled into that when I was, 14, almost 15 years old. And, you can imagine what they told me at the time, because New Jersey had a state athletic commission back then. So they were like,
you couldn't actually train at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. You could train doing the general things. Even if you were a referee, you still would have to learn how to take a bump. And, I guess using the terminology is okay, right? Everybody will be up to speed with that.
Yeah. This is total shoot. Yeah. We don't, there's no kayfabe going on.
I stumbled upon the kayfabe sheets when I was going to John Arezzi's conventions.
That's what was my next question. When did you find the Observer in them? So
you could, in the back of there, they advertised just publicly. It's funny because I think back to how many times I saw Wrestling Riot in there, and that's like early 90s, yeah. And I remember seeing Dave Meltzer at some local matches up here. And, of course, I knew who he was because there was a buzz, even the smartest, most hardened fans are, hey, Dave Meltzer's in the third row. And we got to learn what he looked like. And, yeah, so there was just Brian Hildebrand, guys all around this area. It was almost amazing. You would go to the Meadowlands and you would look around at some of those fans and you'd see the same people over and over. It was just a hardcore gathering amongst fans. Had to be like what it was like locally in Memphis. Like, you go to the Coliseum on Monday nights and you see half the people that wound up becoming professional wrestlers. that were sitting in the
Yeah,
crowd or
because
whatever.
yeah,
So
I think it's I've told this story many times that I think that Memphis wrestling in this area, the reason Memphis wrestling is got so many little promotions is because everybody grew up, they wanted to be Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, and we didn't play on the playground. We weren't playing superhero. We was playing I'm Jerry Lawler, I'm Bill Dundee, I'm this, I'm that. Yeah. And then it was the everybody knew who Jerry Lawler was. It wasn't like, who? What are you talking about? So Monday morning was the big deal. We'd first talk about wrestling at school, and we would talk about any football that happened on Sunday. But Monday, that was what it was mainly about. Was and Tuesday was Monday Night Football. So that was my life growing up. It was, let's talk about wrestling. And when I got the Observer the first time was during, I think, my last Christmas break. So it was in 1985. I got it. And I mean 1985, and then I got it, and then went to school that after Christmas break, thinking I knew everything about the business, and that that I had all the secrets. Something that you mentioned, that they went to different territories. I was obsessed with real names. You remember when everybody used to be obsessed with the real names of the wrestlers?
and there was a magazine called Wrestling World that was ran by Stately Wayne Manor. And then one of the people he had working for him was Carmine Desperado, who, eventually broke into business, who was actually doing double duty. He was writing wrestling, he was taking pictures, but he was also the creator. That was one of his gimmicks. And the other gimmick he had was Huey Marks is the name that he used to write. Like the ghost name that he would write under is he would write up all these, and they would Wrestling World kind of like rock my brain, because I was like, oh my God, here's everybody's real names laid out in front of us. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Terry Bollea.
Right,
So
right. Yeah.
those were some of those magazines bordered on it was kind of weird. Like later on, what was the magazine that they had? Was it Wrestling Toxic? That was pretty much like Dave Meltzer's newsletter, but in the form of a magazine. But they
I don't
had
remember
Norm
the name of it, but I remember it. They were a little, like a few years ahead of their time, in the sense that the internet exploded and smartened everybody up. But at that time, no one really, I think no one really wanted to be smartened up. And here's a magazine that saw the success of Dave Meltzer, which was, Dave made a full-time job of it, and he only had 2,000 to 3,000 subscribers, but they were thinking, oh, he's got there's a difference between being rich and making a living, and that's what he was doing. I remember him quitting his regular job.
I remember that too.
Yeah,
because
had to do the Observer. Yeah,
in 86, 87. He was actually brought onto the WWF payroll, and that like
right.
All of us just stood around and were like, wow, like it's almost like one of our own is getting a full-time job, in wrestling or whatever. But he continued to write the newsletter. There was some kind of weird hush money thing with him and them, and I know that they used to go to him. And this shows you the real pull that guy had. I mean, the audience base that he had, just how much his opinions were respected, because he didn't write the kayfabe sheets to expose the business. He wrote it to show and to cover pro wrestling like nobody had done before as a business, as a whole. Like, what was the house? What was the real house?
Yeah, but it started as him just trying to get together all the results from all the areas and telling people what was going on. And then, like you said, that's what he started doing. And he also, people don't understand that the Observer, now everyone looks at Dave and looks at the Observer and goes, blah, blah, he don't know nothing, what, blah, blah, kind of thing.
Yeah, they try to discredit.
They try to
discredit what he puts out.
Trade publication. Right. It was a trade publication, right, Tony? It was for the inside, and they looked at the attendance in each one of the places and decided whether they were going to go work there, because the promoters would lie, but the people sitting in stuff today would not lie about attendance.
Yeah, exactly. And it was covered from state athletic commissions, so that's money that they legally paid out. So it was like for once, somebody was exposing the truth on what was happening with professional wrestling. And I cared more about that, more about the business. I was always going to be a fan. I was always going to, you're walking around your house and you just saw Tugboat Thomas just debuted with the WWF, and you're walking around in your living room, you're doing this or doing your favorite wrestlers' mannerisms or cutting their promos in the mirror. There was always going to be that. But for once, I got to see, and two, it really opens your eyes as to who is good, who is trying, who is phoning it in, who is lazy during the house shows, all that stuff. And it was just fascinating to me. I was like, finally someone's speaking truthfully about wrestling and not trying to like brainwash you and, and
I
not trying
say
to tell
that,
you,
but I
yeah,
think we were brainwashed to a certain worst, as we say in the South. We was brainwashed to a certain extent on people like, the Observer readers. We had this deal where we didn't like Hulk Hogan. Ric Flair was our favorite wrestler. We didn't like Dusty Rhodes because Ric Flair
we
was our.
didn't like Dusty's booking. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't like Dusty's booking, but the idea is if you watch the latest Dusty documentary, no one talks about that, but there was an underlying thing in the business, and it wasn't just us smart fans or the Observer readers. It was the boys in the business. They were just like,
Yeah.
I hate this booking. Dusty's just
And
putting over himself.
even
Dusty's just doing this. So, yeah.
I thought one of the more interesting things that was always we there was a reason why we didn't like it, and even the casual fans would kind of pick up on it. Even you could feel it from them. And you're in New Jersey or you're around Philadelphia. Philly was like an hour and a half from where I grew up, and you know even the casual fans would pick up on the utter distaste for certain people. But and two, like even people around us, it was like we almost didn't want to talk too much because that was all stuff that we went out our way to get and knowledge and acknowledge, and two, even the casual fans, it was like we didn't want their stupid questions. We didn't want to have to put up with explaining to a normal fan, what words like angle meant
Yeah,
and
like I
what
said,
words like
we knew
heat
it all.
meant.
Yeah, we're an observer.
Yeah,
We know it all now. So,
it was almost
that's
like we wanted to. It was almost like we were trying to protect what business there was to protect from people that weren't smart, because then you'd have to, well, how much money did these guys really earn? And you're like, oh, you can't explain to somebody from a business perspective.
I never understood all that, but you're right. I never thought about the idea that we were, or not really understood, but thought about that we were like say, kayfabing because we didn't
Right.
want to tell anybody else anything. So
At first, you just wanted to, you were so happy that you had this knowledge that, oh, that's Hector Guerrero as Lasertron or whatever. It led to a funny story. Brian Christopher told me a funny story, him and Kevin growing up, where there was some guy in the second row, and Brian goes, next time you see Kevin, just start going, Lasertron, Hector Guerrero. He goes, he'll know what I mean. And apparently there was some sheet reader down in Memphis that was going, Hector Guerrero, Lasertron. And it was like, it almost, it was kind of like that for us, like when Terry Taylor had, and I was already like actively wrestling, but when the NWA, when WCW had come to the Meadowlands and Terry Taylor got the crap kicked out of him by Stan Hansen in about 3 minutes, everybody was doing rooster curls at him and everything. And this is after he left the WWF. So even those people wouldn't let him go of that.
we did
They
some
kind of
really
held it
crazy
to him.
things on those Memphis trips. The Philly people came Memphis trips. We Kevin or Kerry Von Erich was in the ring, and we chanted "Just Say No." And
Oh
just
my
stuff
God.
like that. I mean, it was like a smart aleck kind of fans, but we knew everything. I think that's funny.
Right around the time before I came down to Memphis full time, I remember going down to Louisville. Louisville Coliseum on a Tuesday. I just wanted to see what a house show like there. And by this point, I was even before I had a license. I was going to my brother. I have a brother who's 5 years older than me. I was going to his friends and giving them gas money and, mowing lawns, or, when I could start working at the local golf center, picking up golf balls. I would get a hold of them and I would find a way, or I'd take a train, or, and a lot of this stuff I would have to do kind of like behind my parents' back. But eventually, I got their nod and they were cool with it. But so that's when my brother's friends were coming along, and some of them had hung around locally. I remember going down to Louisville, Kentucky, and I'll never forget, they were waving. It was after Jerry Lawler got into trouble in '93. They were waving handcuffs at him in like the second row, like a bunch of wise asses. Yeah, so people like that, we almost couldn't help ourselves. But remember the whole group of fans that they put paper bags on their head as the ghosts of WCW passed, when Jim Herd was like getting rid of everybody.
There was that, and it was almost there was that section of fans that because we were smartened up, there was that. I think it was a mentality or an ego that we knew just like they did. I one time, the Nightmares were one of my favorite teams growing up, and I knew who they were. Yeah, so underrated. So we're in Caruthersville, Missouri, and it's an outside show, and Ken Wayne is in the ring, the Nightmares in the ring, and I yell, "Hey, Ken!" Ken has his mask on. I say, "Hey, Ken!" And when someone yells, "Hey, Tony," what do? You turn around. So Ken turns around in the ring and says, "What?"
No.
Yes, he did. God. I loved it. It was awesome. But then, so tell me, you're a Jersey boy. How did you end up? And I want to talk about how we met, how we've been friends for so long. But let's take a quick commercial break, and we come back. I'm going to talk about your trip to Memphis and how we found each other, kind of thing. That sounded kind of how we found each other. So there you go.
The journey begins.
Hey, we would like to welcome ArizonaBayCoffee.com. That's ArizonaBayCoffee.com as a sponsor of Shootin The Shiznit. That's right. We now have a coffee blend on ArizonaBayCoffee.com. Morning Shiznit is a medium roast coffee that is designed to get you up and moving early in the morning. That's right. Before you do anything else, you will need your morning Shiznit. After the first cup or your last cup of the day, remember that you make sure to say, "Love my mama." Go to ArizonaBayCoffee.com today. Free shipping to all listeners at STSPod.club. Are you enjoying the episode? Well, Cash App us. That's right, $BTSTS. You don't have Cash App? Download it and get $5. That's right, $5. That's $BTSTS, $BTSTS. Hey, use our Uber Eats code EATS-BrianT24790UE. That's EAT-BrianT24790UE. Use that code and get $20 off a $25 order.
Mysterious Productions. Let's get spun.
Ooh. This episode is brought to you by Spunk Lube. Spunk Lube is the perfect blend of water and silicone. It is an all-purpose personal lubricant that can be used for any occasion. You will love the natural feeling and look of it. It is safe for sensitive skin. Go to spunklube.com and tell them Shootin The Shiznit sent you.
It's Saturday night, and it's going down. Me and her being at it for a couple of rounds. When things got dry, man.
Remember, all episodes, Memphis in May. Go to STSPod.club. Be there.
This is the first time that your name was ever dropped to me, like personally. Like, we would all chit chat. There was a guy named Perry Smith who I unearthed on Facebook a few years ago. Even guys like him, when they would go to the John Rezzi conventions, we would just talk about Dallas wrestling. We would talk about, they had a Zodiac, a guy under the mask as a Zodiac. And
Right.
at the time we had the Zodiac Killer up here. So we were like, this is just, anyway, he would just keep dropping names. And Dave Meltzer himself dropped your name to me. And he goes, there's a guy that puts out the Wrestling Riot. And he goes, and he covers Memphis in some real detail. So I think I was one of your early subscribers as far as that goes, under my legal name. I mean, I tried wrestling under my legal name, and then nobody believed that it was my real name. So
Right. Yeah, you were. We called it Tape Update at first, and it was just tapes, and then we ended up doing a Wrestle Riot. But it was through the Observer that me and you actually met and talked. And then it was years before we actually met in person, wasn't it? It was the first
before
time
we met in person.
When you
it was always by proxy. It was always because toward the end of the
hold on. Let's rewind it just a little bit. How did you? What made you come from Jersey to Memphis? What's going through your mind at the time?
I had always been a huge Memphis fan, and Dennis Carluzzo in Jersey. If it wasn't Dennis Carluzzo, before ECW was Tri-State Wrestling, TWA, they were bringing in Stan Lane. They were bringing in Jim Cornette. They were bringing in Jerry Lawler, Eddie Gilbert. I remember Al Perez for some reason. Austin Idol, Adrian Street. They were bringing in so many of the Memphis guys over in TWA. And Dennis Carluzzo would use Jerry Lawler, Eddie Gilbert, Stan Hansen, Terry Funk. So the more that I would, and this Memphis obsession keeps growing as time is going on. I've already had a couple professional matches. The first place I went to was Larry Sharp's Monster Factory. So I told you some of that before, how I stumbled into it, because, you keep hearing Monster Factory. Even in the magazines, you hear Monster Factory.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was fixing to say. They were huge in the magazines, because Larry would let them come in, take photographs. He wanted to get his people over. Plus, Larry was a businessman. He was a worker. He was getting his school over, and he was getting himself over more. So, yeah.
Two, also the key to this whole thing was a guy named Professor Elliott Marin was the guy's name. And, I told him, hey, I've been going to, and he goes, hey, they're starting up another wrestling school up there too. Mike Masters, Rocky Jones, 1990 was launching ECPW. And then from there, you heard about Mike Sharp had opened up a school, so we go there. Bill DeMont, Lodi, New Jersey, was in a racquetball court. So that was 4 different schools right there in New Jersey. Plus, you could always go to Johnny Rod's. I went up there like once or twice. There was nothing I could really do because, he would charge like $25 a workout because, I wasn't actually legal. As this is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I'm starting to train, I'm already having like a match here and there. I'm already having like matches, just local stuff that was so small up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. They were using Joel Gertner when he was like 14, 15 years old. They were using him as a manager, and he went by the name of Joey Jaguar. So you could see, like, now all of us, Daryl Streety was another one. Now all of us are starting to meet from being guys that read the newsletters and saw each other's names under the results in magazines when you would submit the results. Now, we're having to put together who's who because there's our legal names that we dealt with each other. And then, to find out that, Louis Dangerously, Lou, oh gosh, I was never good with his long Italian last name. But guys like that, you would learn oh, that's that guy's legal name. Oh my God. I see he was writing into the Observer looking for videotapes or looking for old magazines or whatever. So it as small as the community might have seemed, it was like everybody was spread out all over America.
And everybody was starting to get into business at some spot. I was taking pictures, selling to Pro Wrestling Illustrated. All of us that were smart fans, quote unquote, a lot of us end up getting in the business. You was talking about the Observer, people writing in the Observer, and then you already mentioned him earlier, was Stately Wayne Manor. He did Wrestling World, but he was Ernie Santilli in the Wrestling Observer. Remember that? He would write those big long
God,
letters.
Yeah. And the funny thing is some of what really blew it open to me was I went to a local show at Madison High School, which is only one town away from me. It was the end of my freshman year, and I noticed that there was a typo when I sent it in on all the match results. There was like 3 or 4 names I didn't get or couldn't pronounce. There was a duplicate because I was like, well, I better keep my eyes open. Maybe somebody is going to send in these guys' legal names and names or whatever, and I'll learn who this guy was that I thought was somebody else or whatever. So what happened was it was a duplicate of what was printed in the Observer, and I'm like, oh my God. The people with all the magazines, what they call the after mags, were just plagiarizing all the results, and it just like
Well, that's what they do now. You ever noticed that on Friday afternoon, you'll start getting all these websites that say, "Oh, we have learned." Well, you just got the Observer this morning on, you got it mailed to you with on the online. I keep saying online Observer, but that's what I read now compared to the paper. Do you still get the paper, or do you read the online version?
People will send me stuff because I have so much. I have so much in to send to them, and if I had to subscribe to everything, like I would have your Patreon, I would have like everybody's Patreons, I would have Dave Meltzer's newsletter and all that stuff. But like if something comes up that's of interest, and there even became several points in time where he would print something negative about me, and I would go off on Dave, and I'd be like, "What the hell, man? I've been one of your most loyal guys," or I tell him, "That's not what happened," or "That's not the truth," because
he called my match. This one he couldn't say abortion anymore, so he said the word that we don't call, that we can't say anymore, was BT Express.
Was that the BT Express in the ECW? What became the ECW Arena? Is that the one? Or was that something in Memphis?
Because it was at a school. Yeah, it was at a school. There's a movie, Silver Linings. It was actually filmed right there where we wrestled. But yeah, it was. I was in the opening match with a gazillion people on the show, so it was fun to always say I was on the opening match with.
I always wondered how on planet Earth I always wondered how on planet Earth you wound up in Philly, but I guess that'd be for when I interview you or something. If I eventually get my own podcast.
It was because of the time that was a benefit. Yeah, it was a benefit. I knew Dennis. All these people you mentioned, it's like I got connected with them because of Wrestling Radio. Was doing. That's how I really got connected with Lawler, is because of Wrestling Radio. Carmella Panfield and Joe Gertner there, not Gertner, Goodhart, Joe Goodhart. That's how I got connected with a lot of stuff. That's
especially whose name I meant to drop between him and Dennis Carluzzo was bringing in Eddie Gilbert and Jerry Lawler. So this dates itself. So I would go up to Eddie Gilbert and I'd make him these 8-hour compilations, or I'd hand him 2 or 3 master copies of videotapes of him in every territory. So it wasn't before long I started getting in good with Lawler, but Eddie Gilbert was the one that was, how willing Eddie was to talk to anybody, reading newsletters, writing newsletters. Eddie just was fascinated by pro wrestling that much. And Eddie Gilbert.
He did Cassette Wrestling News. We've had it on the show, on the feed. He did an episode of Cassette Wrestling News way before it was okay to talk about the inside, but he loved, and Jeff Osborne talks about this, about the way, well, JD McKay also, he just loved the business. He loved everything about it. He was the biggest fan ever.
And the weird thing, like even that name that you just dropped right there, Jeff Osborne wound up doing in Evansville, Indiana. Didn't he wind up doing some of the first like MMA?
First MMA independently was Hook and Shoot, and then he did some of the very first girl versus girl matches in the United States. He had all the girls that you see from, from the, not right now, but a long time when they were coming in, like the Ronda Rouseys and Shayna Baszler and people like that. He was using them, very successful. But you know what happens? It's the same thing that happened in wrestling, is that when you have something successful like he did with Hook and Shoot, then you got all the other.
You got 20 more coming.
Yeah, you got 20 more that aren't as good, but they'd rather. Yeah.
I might actually be able to find it right here, the VHS. There was a VHS days ago that I pulled out just like this. And on it, like names like Jeff Osborne, people out there wouldn't know, or they wouldn't, but there's such a link to it, because I pulled out a videotape like this, and there it was. It was his P.O. box and everything. Norm Dooley. Norm Dooley would correspond.
Oh my God, Norm Dooley.
Yeah. Norm Dooley was like the master. I mean, he had more Memphis videos, local videos. He had more. I was trading with him and getting more stuff when I lived down in Memphis. When I first moved down in '94, I knew that I was going to move down there.
Let's tell the quick Norm Dooley story. Norm Dooley and Jim Cornette are the two guys that came up with the infamous Meltzer star system.
5-star system, yeah.
And it was a 4-star system at the time, and Dave changed it to 5-star. But Norm was so smart. I got some stuff from him I could find where you couldn't find stuff from anyone else. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like we gloss over names like that, and people don't. Weasel Dooley, his nickname was Weasel because he had facial features. He looked like a weasel. But so many, and I remember one of the greatest stories I ever read was like a buddy of mine out in the Midwest. He had met up with a diehard wrestling fan, and both of them had read the sheets. And this is before you could be online, before Prodigy really started taking off. Like Prodigy was there in 92, 93. That's when my world was opened up to that. And even then, it wasn't as if you would see somebody again and again at the same wrestling matches, you would assume they were somebody, or the wrestlers would use them in a high spot. And you're like, that person right there has something to do with inside the professional wrestling business. You wouldn't. It's like you knew that they had something to do with it, but you didn't know what they had to do with it. You just knew that, like, oh, okay, like go to this person, like introduce yourself or whatever. And you figured eventually you'd get somewhere. But it's funny because we gloss over names and you don't realize, like Jeff Osborne alone, like what a huge impact that he had on, Hook and Shoot. You brought it up. It just seems like names were glancing and going over, but boy, you could do an entire
Jeff,
podcast.
He comes on with Cassette Wrestling News, and we talk. We've done 9 episodes, coming up with 10, I think, and we talk about that.
And here I am, the first time on here with you, and it's like,
oh yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
I'm interrupting.
What we did is we're doing similar to what you did. He sent me a box of Cassette Wrestling News. And I'm taking the cassette and I'm transferring it to so people can hear the cassette about the stuff that they did back then. And we talk about the idea, Stone Cold called his Cassette Wrestling News the very first podcast. It was really and it really was. He was like the one guy. Let's talk about Memphis, though. Why did you just? I knew he was a big fan, but when you arrive in Memphis, this New Jersey guy, what kind of reception do you get? How do you get involved with the Memphis promotion and stuff like that?
Everybody initially hated my guts, and they probably still do to this day. But Jerry Lawler knew that I was a correspondent of Dave Meltzer. He knew for years. He remembered me trying to break in Jersey and remembered seeing me up there. But I was like public enemy number one. He would tell the other guys in the locker room, "Hey, don't tell that kid nothing." He reports to the newsletter. It's like, well, if I did that, I'd be accused of killing the business. Why would you keep me hanging around? And I didn't realize,
Right.
most of that was they were just busting balls or whatever. They weren't really, they might have known I slipped some information out here or there because, there comes a point where you're so frustrated, you're trying to get somewhere and you don't care if it's, as long as it's truthful, you don't care about taking a shot at somebody. When you're young and stupid, you don't care about that kind of thing. But I mean,
It's
that's
the reason why I got on the outs with Lawler the first time was because I was getting information to Dave or really just saying stuff on the yearbook. I talked about how he in Jonesboro, in local shows, Lawler didn't do anything but hide the chain or, something like that. And that's why we got on it because he hated that, something that the Memphis promotion until recently, and we talked about this on the phone, I guess a couple months back that, I was always the Memphis kayfabe guy, and man, you weren't going to let him do anything. And it was just weird because, the whole business was exposed during some of that incarnations of Memphis wrestling, and no one even still didn't want anything to do with, what can Brian Tramel do for us kind of thing. You come into what do you start doing? You start doing the ring, you start training with somebody. How do you get started doing regular shows?
The same thing that wound up happening when I started going overseas. I go over there, and in this case, I came down to Memphis, and Eddie Gilbert was already gone. It was one of his in and out. Well, I didn't know that was the very last time that he went was just weeks before I arrived in '94. I finished county college that spring, and then that was it. I moved down to Memphis full time because I knew one way or another, Memphis was a place next to Japan that was my destination. That's where I wanted to be. That's where I wanted to go. It was one of the last surviving territories, and I saw the writing on the wall. I was like, I knew they already had the developmental deal with the WWF, and I go, well, and plus it's. Just like the reason that they have FedEx as its headquarters, it's so centrally located that you can go anywhere from Memphis. But I felt I had an in through Eddie Gilbert, and I just knew that I'd eventually. And then, he's like, "Oh yeah, try to get a hold now." Now this guy Randy Hales was booking, and Randy Hales hated my guts from day one. He was another one. He felt that I was like one of those ECW, Jersey, Philly, smart mark, idiot guys or whatever. Randy Hales hated my guts from the very get, and it never got any better over all the years. I guess because I was labeled as like a newsletter.
He hated me. Then we've smoothed things over, and then he's mad at me again. Apparently, he's mad at me now because I provide content for Memphis Wrestling. I don't talk to him, and he's a real strange individual.
He is.
But was it part?
But the thing, I'm not trying to knock nobody, but the thing I never understood was you're such a big time mark of Memphis that you think that you could be some kind of aid to it, some kind of good that you could do for it. And Randy always felt that way about himself, and that's the way I always saw myself. And especially moving from Jersey after I got my, the associate's degree in college, broadcast journalism. Now I was going to be at Channel 5 every Saturday, so I figured I could probably get an internship there, from broadcast journalism. I could go in, I could do that, or I could do voices, or there's, so many faucets with Fox had 209 affiliates all across America at the time. So I'm like, well, there's Channel 5 right there. I could get in, I could find a way in. So eventually, I wound up getting booked for them. And the first guy I wrestled was Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. And then from there, it was
oh wow,
going
on
up
TV. Who was you tagging? Were you tagging with somebody?
Fred James has long since passed away, and Fred was a very simple-minded guy, and I met him doing the independents around Memphis, but Fred didn't have an overall grasp of wrestling. He has a brother and a cousin that's involved now, and it's not me saying anything bad about him. The Rowdy Rebel, Fred James, is a guy that if you ever met him, you knew what he was. He wanted to be Jerry Lawler from day one. I mean, he would wear the same type of trunks and everything, and he was just a guy around the Memphis area or whatever. But I'll never forget.
You was working TV for Memphis, but you said all the other promotions around Memphis, they were considered outlaw back then. Was you
Outlaws,
working
yeah.
the outlaw shows? Then going to Memphis TV to work?
Because I had to get the dust knocked off of me because I had moved from Jersey, came down south. So when I asked Randy Hales, I'm like, well, what can I do that won't be a conflict of interest? And he said, I'm good friends with Don Bass. He doesn't run any of my towns or whatever. Okay, so then I went across the bridge, hooked up with Don Bass, gave him a bunch of VHS of me wrestling all over Jersey, New York. I had been down in Indianapolis, too, by that point for Burt Prentice, Mike Samples, all those people. So, the newsletters, they helped you find out who was running regularly. Because, me and Flash Flanagan, about the same age. I saw that, he was down there. And then when I learned that he was only 18, 17, 18 years old, I was like, oh, okay, I got another guy like me. But, it was, I wanted to make sure because I had heat with the Memphis office immediately. Like I said, upon meeting me, Randy Hales hated my guts. But I guess I always lean back on, Eddie Gilbert would always put in a call or put in a word for me. And it didn't go well through Doug because, Doug just saw me as another guy that didn't belong, that had to earn his stripes to be in wrestling. I was that one guy that everybody looked at and they were like, he doesn't belong around here, or show him how rough it is, or put you in the ring with Coco Ware who would beat the hell out of you. It was all this was, that's how they gauged who belonged and who didn't belong, because the beatings were bad, or the Moondog stuff, and beatings could be even worse by the week. But that was, hey, if this kid comes back after this ass kicking, maybe it was meant to be with him.
Did you? But at one point, you went from, you turned it, you did a mask gimmick. I can't remember the name. It starts with an H. What was I can see that. I'm horrible. My memory's horrible. But you did a mask gimmick. You didn't get a huge push, but you got more of a push on TV with that, right?
Way more. There was a couple pushes before that, but that was supposed to be the end-all, be-all big push was for the Super Hysteria thing, because I had been doing the moonsault and the flips and all that stuff for as long as I had been doing it. And, that was supposed to be my huge big-time break after, being on Memphis TV 3-4 years. Not only that, like Brian Lawler had explained it to me. He goes, you screwed up. You came in here without a mask. He goes, why weren't you just doing jobs under a mask? Then you could have spread your wings and flew away. He's like, every time now that they find something for you, don't you notice that it's under a mask, that it's not as you? And I always thought, well, there's more levels to having a mask. You could lose your hair. You could lose the mask. There's always the identity thing or whatever. Then you could go under a different mask, yeah. And the lady Kathy used to make everybody's tights. That was down there in, what was the name of that? Horn Lake? Was it Horn Lake, Mississippi she was from? But she would make all these different.
Remember her, so.
Yeah, she'd make all these different masks and all these, and eventually, Bill Dundee cursed her out once, and she left and never came back. But in fact, I went to get some new tights made up in '99, and she had told me, she was like, "I don't do wrestling no more." Before that, she was working on strippers' clothes. And she said the wrestlers were even worse.
Stripper clothes, wrestlers, yeah, pretty much the same thing. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, like the movie The Wrestler, which, God, I hated that movie. I know all my friends were in it and everything, but God, I hated that movie. But yeah,
so you're in Memphis. You're doing all the you're doing all the outlaw towns, but you get a semi push there with as Hysteria, Super Hysteria. It's kind of a luchador gimmick. You're doing all the flips and flops. And was this the same time that Kevin Lawler decided to be the Yellow Jacket? Did you ever wrestle the Yellow Jacket on TV?
Yellow Jacket, I should send you the link. I have several matches. One of them's me and him against Steve Dahl and Bill Dundee. And Lawler's doing commentary.
I have to watch that. Yeah.
And Jerry Lawler's doing commentary. So Lawler's doing
Oh
commentary and
man,
his own kid
that's
getting his
awesome.
ass
Yeah,
kicked in the job
Kevin.
guy match. Yeah.
I love
I
it
can
that
send to you
Kevin
now.
was.
I got the thing free over here. This is people are
Yeah,
chiming in as it's like I can't respond to them, of course. I'm on here with you. So if you're out there,
but
if they're
Kevin
listening
bought
live,
the
like knock it off.
bodysuit, right? Remember when he bought the
Yeah.
bodysuit for Yellow Jacket, and he put the
No,
bodysuit on, and it looked like he was big and muscular, and that's what I remember
yeah.
about the Yellow Jacket. Yeah,
I
I
remember
loved
we're
it.
at
I
TV.
loved it.
We're at TV. It was pretty creative. All the tights that he would come up with it and everything, which why the hell am I spending my time putting Kevin over? Anyway.
No, I don't know. We're putting Kevin over. I don't know. Kevin. I sent him a text. My last text I sent Kevin was, "Kevin, why do you always have to be an asshole?" So there you go.
Yeah. No, but it's
I
funny
love it.
because
Kevin was one of those guys that Brian took it and did with it. Kevin was kind of I kid with him about this, but this. You're talking about the black sheep. He was really the black sheep
yeah,
of that family. And then you and Kevin were kind of friends during this time, and it didn't make it. Bill Dundee told me it was because of Kevin that he didn't like me at the time because me and Kevin were friends. I was like, I thought it was a kayfabe sheets. He goes, no, it was because of Kevin. So,
Kevin was he was also
what would
wrestling.
you consider your big? Go ahead.
No, he was also he was wrestling in Brighton at the time under another different mask. So he was doing Outlaws too. But yeah, he was wrestling in Brighton, Tennessee at the time. Remember, David Milliken had that town up and going and running. Also, too, I was the Wolverine, which was the Wolfman gimmick. When they had that guy Sean V from who I knew way back in the day, and
Right.
5 years prior in Indianapolis, Indiana, and they had the whole feud with Mike Samples brought in the Wolverine to and Tony Falk did in some of the spot shows. But yeah, Dr. Death, that was another one where they had me booked all around Marion, Arkansas, all these different towns and everything. Dr. Death, where I had the stethoscope and everything, and how you would imagine how a doctor would look.
Did you at the time, were you still part of the ring crew, or had you come up to the point to where you didn't have to set up the ring and do all that to wrestle? Because they used to do that a lot with the young guys that worked the opening matches. Your part of your job is arriving and putting the ring up. Oh, you'll also get to wrestle on the third match, but we need you to take the ring down. So
with all the different masks and everything, and I would always have a referee shirt, or somebody would let me borrow one, or just carry a white shirt out there and referee in that. Eddie Gilbert always told me, he was like, Buddy Wayne been doing that ring. It was so weird talking to Eddie Gilbert because his natural voice was so much deeper. Like his real voice was so much deeper than, I'm Eddie Gilbert, Jerry Lawler, I'm going to be here. It just kind of like freaked me out always. But he told me, he was like, get over with Buddy Wayne, help Buddy do that ring. He's like, he's got a real young son that's helping him, which at the time wound up being Aubrey, and then later on it was Greg. So there was that whole entire, from the time I got down to Memphis, I was helping Buddy Wayne with the ring. And then on top of it, when Jerry bought his own ring, because Buddy Wayne had quit, Buddy Wayne had wanted more money or something. They got into some kind of spat. And Lawler wound up getting his own ring. And you remember, Downtown Bruno was hauling the ring, and he was putting it up and down. So since like Buddy Wayne had quit in 95, 96. I remember
that.
Yeah, and from the minute Bruno started doing that ring, I was constantly helping Bruno. Because Dennis Carlozo told me, he goes, Bruno's a cool MFer, is what he called him. He goes, Bruno's a cool dude. He goes, him and Nate the Rat. He goes, they helped me out so much when I went down there to Memphis. I've known him for years. And so, I was there to help Bruno with that. And Bruno taught me how to put up and down the ring. But the thing was, he never wanted to do the ring. He had it. He was sick of it. They were jerking his guys around, he felt, and treating them like field hands, yelling at them all the time. The only money they could make other than the ring was selling programs. So he just felt the whole thing was unfair, and he always tried taking care of those people. I was one of those people. Bruno booked me for, he was the one that was booking a lot of the Memphis Child Boys. So he was the one that was putting me in there with Sid Vicious, with Lawler, with Doug Gilbert, Tommy Rich, all those guys.
Sid Vicious, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So
God.
you're down in Memphis, you're running, and you end up I'm trying to get you to the certain point here. Where you're kind of getting a push. What makes you think? What gives you the thought that I know you get a shoot job, you do a shoot job, plus you're doing wrestling. But what makes you think? Well, I'm fucking done with Memphis wrestling. I'm done with these guys. Also tell us. I've promoted this a couple times. There was also a promotion called TAJJ. Was that right? And you was part of that, right?
That was years and years later. That was 2003. Yeah, that was like 2002, 2003.
But you'd already quit Memphis Wrestling by that time. You'd already give up on everyone. That was it. Just the idea that you knew you weren't never going to get a push or do anything.
No, the big push came, and maybe 2-3 months later, that's when Larry Burton came in. So the big push happens. Bruno doesn't want to do the ring, but now every time Bruno turns around, he's got nothing to do. They've hired Tony Freeman. Oh, God. They hired Larry Burton. You want to hear a damn story? Larry Burton walks into a friggin' Chick-fil-A or one of those places. He walks into and he sees this kid behind the counter and he goes, "Hey, you got a good voice. Have you ever thought about?" And they put this goof on TV. That's the guy that Bruno eventually shoot attacked on live Memphis TV. Bruno, they had come to me. Here's the entire thing, how it really happened. I'm getting $150 a night to put up the ring. I'm getting $80 a night to put it up at the Coliseum, which eventually they started running the Big One Expo Center. And I'm getting $50 to tear it down, $80 to put it back up. Then they started using Jerry's, ring on some of those occasions too. $150 a night. So the boys are, one night I walked in and I'm feeling good. I'm doing double duty. I'm getting ready. And Lawler goes, why do you squint so much? You need glasses. And I go, I don't need glasses. I drink out of the bottle. Here I am just,
right.
Boom, I had that one in the can. And all of a sudden Lawler looks at me, goes, real wise ass. And he goes, tonight, and it was a Buddy Wayne town because Buddy Wayne didn't want to haul the ring, his own ring, to his own house shows. He was having me do it. I remember having this big, long fight with Ken Wayne. I'm like, that ring right there, because it was on VHS. I had my wife with a camcorder. And I go, you're going to tell me that's your dad's ring. You've put that ring up 10 million times. That's Jerry Lawler's ring. I was like, I know. I hauled it there. He's like, why would my dad run a house show? I'm like, he did. He did. As God is my witness, he did. Aubrey Wayne could back me up actually on that too, because it was one less thing that Aubrey had to worry about, because Aubrey was starting to break in as a referee at the time. So anyway, Larry Burton and Lawler sit me down, and they cut me back from $150 to $100 a night, and they said, you got to get rid of Bruno's old ring crew to make this happen, because that's $50 right there that you're paying out anyway. So it's like you'd get all the money, but that $100 might be enough. And at this point, it's my full-time job, Memphis Wrestling. I'm going to Louisville. I'm going to Nashville. I'm going to, you know what I mean? And when I'm not wrestling, Kevin Lawler's in Larry Burton's ear going, you got a guy like Tony Myers just sitting home today. He could be putting up posters and flyers and, So I would branch out and try to go to the local gas stations and pass out things or, get some buzz going. At this point, we're at the Big One Expo Center. So then, of course, Bruno and I get sideways because he's like, you should have told him that you were going to quit. You were going to quit. I'm the one that taught you how to put up the damn ring. And I said, I wound up doing the ring because now Bruno was a part-time referee at the WWE. So it was just this, everywhere I turned, I was like, it's just pressure, it's stress. Then I go to wrestle Jamie Dundee on live TV, debuting the Mexican gimmick. Stayed up all night, did a lot of things I shouldn't have been doing at the time. And those habits started creeping in. And I had just had it, and I saw the territory falling to shit anyway. Whoop. Am I allowed to curse?
Oh yeah.
I'll keep it to a minimum, I promise you. But yeah, I saw the entire territory starting to collapse, and I'm like, this is going nowhere. I could get a regular job and be happy. I have had my fill of wrestling. I'm done. And I quit. Literally, I quit that day. And I remember calling Bruno. I remember thanking Bill Dundee. I was like, thank you for everything. And he goes, oh, you're leaving? And I was like, that's got to be a real telltale sign when a guy moved all the way from Jersey is now making a full-time living hauling the ring. When that guy quits, I mean, everybody knew it was all falling to pieces anyway. But I quit, and at the time, I'd not regularly, every now and then back then, I was going to Japan because of the whole Eddie Gilbert. He had got me in with Wing, and by the time I arrived there, he had quit Wing. But PWC and IWA Kokusai and all these Japanese indies are springing up all over the place with the success of FMW. So I was like, I don't need wrestling in America. I could do it locally just to stay in shape, but I'm going to go to Japan and I'm going to just continue. I'll get my fix there. The THJJ thing happened when 2001, 2002, Rashad Brown, who I broke in, he seen me one night at the casino and he goes, how do I get into this? I want to be a referee. And I was like, same way I did. They trained me to be a wrestler, even though I was just a referee. At the time, because I was so young and so pitifully undersized in Jersey. But I knew he would have to take all the bumps and back bumps. And, besides, he gets to learn something.
Yeah.
It's cool. You learn how to reverse a hammer, a top wrist lock, hammer lock, tight waist lock, side headlock, hammer lock.
By the way, he's a really good referee, and I had a great time every time I was around him. We took him home one night, and he lived. You could go one way in Memphis, or you could go the other way. The other way was through Orange Mountain.
The wrong side of tracks.
Yeah, and Rashard said, BT, what the hell are we going this way for? And I go, it doesn't bother me to go through Orange Mountain. He's like, well, it bothers me. I don't want to go through Orange Mountain. I'm like, okay, buddy. And so we
coming
got
from him,
home,
that means something.
Yeah,
coming from him, that means a lot.
He was scared to go through it. But yeah, it was Orange Mountain in that area at one time. This was maybe 20 years ago. They didn't even have indoor plumbing. They didn't have indoor plumbing at Orange Mountain. You had to have like an outhouse, and I was like,
it sounds like a lot. Sounds like a lot of the venues that Charlie Parks had ran. I was like, how did he even find these places in Memphis?
Where do I take a piss at? So yeah. So you start doing TAJJ. Now this is
I was putting out. Me and Rashad together noticed there was a bunch of dark areas that nobody had ran. And I would watch old Memphis tapes and I'd be like, nobody's really running Brownsville. Nobody's really running, some of these Hornbeak like a lot of these towns have went dark for so long. He brings, he has the Dyersburg guys. So every Saturday night we're going to Dyersburg and everything. So me and Rashad start running our own house shows. West Memphis, Arkansas, at the Boys and Girls Club. We drew really well there. We're going and going, and then I'm putting out flyers, and this guy calls me up, and he goes, yeah, me and my friends do a local access show called TAJJ, and my name is Christopher Woodruff. My name is Chris Lex. And so I went down there, and I checked it out, and it was, you remember backyard wrestling, like everybody, these were a bunch of pretty much untrained kids, but they had integrated, like, Charlie Laird was going there, the old Memphis job guy. So it was great seeing Charlie again. So I brought in like the Johnny Mortons, Alky Hawks, all my buddies from doing all the area independents. And so I walked into TAJJ, and the first thing I saw by the announcer's table was busted up garbage cans, chairs, all these hardcore wrestling. And I was like, all of that's got to go. That's why this place is such a horrible. And I knew that Danny Dunn was best friends with Lawler. because Adam Dunn, as a kid, would show up to the studio. I remember him, and I was like, oh my God, it's that same kid,
Did
but
he
he's got his
produce
own.
TAJJ?
Yeah, he owned it. That was at
Yeah, it was Adam Dunn.
that was at
Yeah.
Danny Dunn Transmission Shop in Memphis, off of Summer Avenue, right across from the adult theater.
Right. It was a big sponsor of Memphis Wrestling, and then so his son is doing this independent, and it was local access. It ended up having a lot of guys. Reno Diamond, you
Yes.
talk about Johnny Morton,
the entire
Chris Rex,
Charlie, the entire Charlie Parks crew of guys was already there. Yeah. Wow, boy, those names. Blaylock the Blazer, just everybody. All those guys were already
I'm still
there.
friends with him. Yeah, I'm a huge Dallas Cowboy fan. Blaylock is, and
I know,
me
and
him are
some
still
of the most
friends.
hysterical Facebook posts you'll ever see on this planet. So yeah, I went in there. They integrated. Now this Memphis had no TV at the time. Cable access and what we were doing was the only thing before Corey Macklin started up his wrestling from the church. It looked like it was from the basement of channel 30. Remember that? As you were going over Summer Ave, you'd have to go down the
This
corporate
was before
empire.
Corey. Did you go and work for Corey after he came? Because I don't remember.
I was just providing them with a lot of the old VHS and everything that you saw on there. But by that point, it was 2003, 2004, and I started to routinely go back to, I was like training guys to wrestle, because that was the ring from the movie Big Money Hustlers, the Insane Clown Posse movie. So these backyard kids got together, and it started out on a trampoline in like Adam Dunn's backyard or some of these kids' backyard, and they eventually bought a $3,000 ring that was left over in an auction from the movie Big Money Hustlers. So that was TAJJ. And at the time, I didn't tell anybody because I thought nobody will believe me, even though I have VHS of it. I'm under a mask, so no one's going to believe that I'm one of the Uchu Meijin Powers or that I wrestle as Leatherface in Japan. No one's going to believe I'm one of the mummies. No one's going to believe that I'm one of the Demon Oyas. All those mask gimmicks that I just explained to you was a place called IWA Kokosai. IWA Kokosai would have a group of mummies: white mummy, black mummy. They eventually had a blue and a red mummy, iron mummy. And then the same thing with Demon Oyas, and then Uchu Meijin X, Uchu Meijin XX, Uchu Meijin XXX, and so on and so forth. Well, they would bring them out in like a big bushel basket, almost like a baby's like playpen. And when you wrestle for them, different groups were using the same gimmicks because, believe it or not, Mick Foley talks about the Uchu Meijin in his book about alien invaders from outer space. And you would have to bring that stuff home, bring it back to the next spot show. There was no actual tours done from these Japanese indies that were springing up everywhere. So I kind of kept it to myself and just continued to go to Japan. And because, how many times you met people in the locker room and they're like, yeah, I was the executioner in the WWF in 1995. And you're just
right.
Yeah, sure you
there
are.
Was, and I know you was doing all that kind of stuff, but then what made you go from that? You're doing all this Japanese. We're gonna wrap up the podcast with we're gonna bring you back and talk about Japan and the whole deal with Onita and all that. But I want to know, this is the first time we met when you started running shows and how popular this. Okay, so but let me say something. In between all of this and behind the scenes, Tony is becoming. You have a hell of a Memphis wrestling all over the place collection of matches. You have videotapes. You're the guy to go to if you're trying to find something. There was me. One time I saw videotapes. There was a guy by the name of John McAdam who actually sold Memphis Wrestling to
that
Tony
guy.
Khan.
His tape list was the most interesting. When you read the tidbits he'd put on his tape list, you would learn something new. I was like, oh my God, this guy used to be a job guy back in the day. Like, How the hell did he get his push?
And then who else? Rob Feinstein was selling tapes at the time too.
He and I had the longest when Onita came back here to America, and we did the whole thing.
We're going to talk about that next time. We're going to talk about that next time. So kayfabe it right now. Kayfabe.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
but
tell me about
so cool
you decided to go to doing hardcore matches in a bar. What gave you that idea?
Okay. And I love how that whole thing came together. Real quick, the thing with Feinstein, he had to put together that me, under my legal name, I was the same guy that would buy and trade tapes with him way 30 years ago.
Right.
When it was almost like it almost like it blew his mind. Like, oh my God, yeah, I remember that. So what I did was in Japan, in between tours, you could stay in between tours if you feel like it. Like, you latch on to a WWS who does tours. You latch on to an FMW who to this day continues to do tours. And so to stay in between tours, I would do some of the smaller shows. They're all Japanese independent wrestling is always labeled as what's called sleaze. It's a terminology that popped up in the mid-90s for anything that was a Japanese outlaw, Japanese independent. And, with guys that aren't very good, they've had a lot of training, but they just suck. They haven't been called up.
It was called garbage wrestling, sleaze wrestling, trash wrestling. That was the term.
Garbage referred more to hardcore and deathmatch because Ricky Choshu saw the success. He saw FMW was outdrawing New Japan and All Japan at the time. So Ricky Choshu went to the press and said, I realized I'd been ostracized because I'm Korean, half Korean or whatever. He goes, but what you people are witnessing, he's like, this is just garbage wrestling. And only just garbage wrestling. It's garbage. But the tape traders labeled it as sleaze. And that's what I was doing. I was wrestling in the bars, and it's like a bohemian setting. These Japanese people are with long stem cigarettes and very bohemian-like, very strange culture setting.
No ring whatsoever.
Yeah. And it doesn't translate well. Here, everybody sees no ring and they go, it's backyard wrestling. Then, if you remember years ago, it became the in thing. Joey Ryan was packing out all these bars all over the place with his bar championship wrestling. So I did a bunch of Tobitas, SPWC. Tobita, if you don't know, Survival Tobita, Masaru Tobita has amassed a humongous cult following because he doesn't just fight aliens. He fights extraterrestrial Japanese guys dressed as poor and cheap outfits. And this is out there on the internet, and I must have a billion videos of it because I'm a lot of the monsters under the mask. So I saw that, and I was like, at the time in Memphis, I was co-managing a Gothic nightclub. I was financing all their equipment. One guy left the other guy. We had 80s night at Liquid Lounge over on Highland Avenue. And then we had upstairs at Zinni's, which is off of Summer and McLean. Small bar there. So we had it going 2 nights a week or whatever. I start bringing back all the VHS and showing them all this weird, wacky sleaze wrestling, no ring, guys bleeding, just sleaze. It's sleaze. It's meant to exploit, pro wrestling for whatever.
Let's be honest, Tony. You was trying to sell the tapes to them too. Come on, tell me that's what
that on top of it. Yeah, sure. That and me going, hey, this is my latest work from Japan. Check this out. And to explain this to somebody and actually give them a VHS and them come back to you and go, what the hell was that? It was like a man wrestling an inanimate object.
That's what you did with your shows. That if someone got a VHS of your shows when you were doing Sex and Violence, right? Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
They would say, what the fuck is this? What is this guy doing? And you contacted I was doing a wrestling riotonline.com at the time. We still talked on a regular basis. I had never met. You said, I'm bringing your boy Psycho in. You come on down, and I want you to be. And I wrote a whole story about this on the site. I'll have to give a link to it. But I was in awe because me and you both were huge Onita fans. We knew what he did with hardcore and how he got people in. But you had.
And when the thing about Psycho was between him and David Estes, whatever his friggin' name.
Pappy,
Yeah, Pappy, the little guy they used to bring around too. They were about the only people. There were people that were willing to do hardcore. Big Country was one of them too. Chris Frazier was there, and Chris Frazier goes, "You're fucking crazy. I can't, And that show paid better than the area independents, but Psycho, I told him, I was like, yeah, this is absolutely brutal, and this is going to chew you up and spit you out. But, at the time, I don't have any tattoos. I got a million piercings, but I was like, the scars themselves look pretty cool for whatever I'm doing overseas anyway. And it was a way for me to keep active and wrestling. But we were going into the little dive bars, and by the time I left Memphis and sold Motley the ring that I had and everything, the New Daisy over on Beale Street was giving us $2,500 every month. And then the other place, because the Rally Point wound up getting shut down, but the other place, the Buccaneer, that has since burned down to the ground, they were giving us $1,500 a month. That's $4K a month. So that's when I, regardless of what we drew, I needed guys. So I was going to CZW and I was going to Ian Rotten and those guys. And I was going, I need guys to do this because.
Right. Because there's not guys in the area that's going to do this so hardcore that, and we're talking glass, thumbtacks, boards, trash cans. And then the sex part of the violence is you had these, girls that were almost completely naked. Wrestling each other in what was it? We had an oil match one night, and we had them wrestling Jello and ice cream. This girl was and they were hot, trashy hot. I'm sorry if you're listening to the podcast, you were trashy hot. But I was backstage, and me and Psycho are standing there, and one of the girls was talking to us, and she was adjusting everything. And as we were standing there, we got a show. We was like, damn, But then she gets out there, and they pull each other's clothes almost completely off. So I was witnessing something that I don't know. It was never something that I had witnessed before, and I don't think I ever have. The idea that this is professional wrestling, but it is something totally different.
Every time that those girls, because I was at the club, so girls here's gothic chicks. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Anything's fair game. Girl, guy, two girls, one guy, two girls, one cup. All of it, it's just but the hardest part was telling those girls, it's fake, right? You guys just work out your own little routine. They didn't get it. They would just go in there and start beating the hell out of each other sometimes. And I'm like, it's a work, but how do you explain that to a normal, But I'll never forget this as long as I live. Pondo notices the girl that works in, because by this point, things are rolling enough. We didn't have the actual office was like me sitting with all this VHS.
Right, yeah.
Pondo comes to me, and Psycho too. Psycho was another one that really had an eye for we called it the assault fairy, because as bloody and cut up as I would be, this chick would run out with a bucket of salt and dump the bucket of salt. And I know all this sounds crazy looking back. To me, it's flesh wounds. To me, Also, too, throw in there at the time, I wound up with jawline cancer right here.
Damn,
that's why.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't remember anything about that.
Ever notice my face is lopsided, and I don't hide it from anybody. This side is significantly smaller than this side because I have no bone here and a giant hole from jawline cancer. Anyway, I don't advise anybody who contracts cancer to do death matches or anything like that. But at the time, too, I was going with Viscera, and I was trying to get a job as a WWE commentator. And the minute that I got the fax 2 days before Christmas saying, we no longer need your services, yada, yada. This is like late 2006. That's when I just went straight into the whole sex and violence thing and ran my first show on my birthday. Cheap way to draw people. But I'll never forget this as long as I live. So everybody fell in love with the girl that was the assault fairy, Kat. And everybody was just nuts over her. And I would tell them, you got as good a chance as anybody. I don't care how fat. I don't care how ugly you are. Everybody's got as good a chance as anybody else, but there's a catch to it. And I explained, she's married. And they're like, she married to a girl or a guy? And I'm like, a guy. And they're like, and Pondo put it best. He was like real nervous. And does he have to be there? And I'm like, yeah, that's the catch. I was like, now you know why I don't sleep with her.
If I remember right, I don't know if she was your girlfriend or your wife at the time. I can't remember. This girl that
you ran across because
extremely hot. She was extremely hot. The girl you was with that time.
Yeah, and that was one of the funny things. Nobody, like a lot of the fans, didn't put that together because nowadays you couldn't do it. But when I repremised the whole thing from Ron Head and J.R. Benson, two more guys who were the newsletter guys.
Right. Yeah.
Later on, they worked for Cornette and Smoky Mountain. When I brought back the whole Ku Klux Klan thing, I mean, what's better than seeing someone like
Legend, right? That was from Legend.
Yeah.
Didn't he do that? Yeah.
And the token hot black chick that would lick all the blood and shit off of me and everything when I would do that gimmick and bleed and everything. That was my wife.
Right. So, I thought it was. Yeah, she was hot as hell. So yeah.
The mother of my oldest, which incidentally enough, 2009, 2010, that's pretty much what caused me to leave Memphis was I lost her to stomach cancer. And everything around Memphis reminded me of her. So I was like, I got to get the hell out of here. That and I got robbed at gunpoint. And I'm like, okay, now I really need to sell this house.
I got almost robbed one time because I got out of my car and went to get ketchup from the drive-through window. The guy got mad at me and pulled a gun on me. So that was in Memphis. That was a great time. Tony, I tell you what, we're going to wrap it up right here because that's where your Memphis stuff ends. We're going to give
a pin in it.
We're going to let's put a pin in it. We're going to give all the information about Tony's, you can reach Tony, blah, blah, blah. He still has a collection of videos that he would be nice he would sell them to you, especially sex and violence. You still have that?
Hard drives.
Oh, they're all on hard drives now. And he has the sex and violence thing. Let me just put a pin in it after I say this. It become your underground. BT, I'm selling hundreds of these fucking DVDs every time I do a show. And I'm like, what? You said, yeah, there's extra money that no one is seeing, but you were selling like hundreds of those DVDs. You had a fan base, didn't you?
Yeah, and it turned into a weird cult. And it's so funny because to this day, Japanese find out about that stuff online because it was me doing all the wacky gimmicks because we didn't have a very big talent roster. So when you see,
right.
CEO Craig Elliott Oppenheimer and this crazy guy who's an evil lawyer and getting the shit beat out of him, and you're seeing all these weird, wacky gimmicks. It's me under every single one of them. It's me with a haircut. It's me with changing up things. But I mean, it couldn't just be me versus Psycho every single show. Some people put the clues together. I'd stick a marble down in my boot so I would walk different or whatever. But everybody knew it was me collecting the scars and taking the beatings. And I thought one of the funniest things is the girl the assault fairy showed me one time was a text from Psycho. And he said, if you woke up next to me, what would you think? And she's like, how should I respond? I go, ew, you want me to respond to Psycho? What the hell, man? Just put the back on that guy. But yeah, it was, it had its time and place. Now everything is so torrented and shared with everybody. I'll show you one thing before you completely put a pin in it. Can you imagine what this is right here? See how big it is?
Yeah.
Try to take one guess at what that is.
I have no idea. All
Here,
DVDs,
I'll tell you.
they're already burned. All the DVDs are burnt. Are they sexual violence?
No,
I can't read that. So
it's Memphis Paychecks. From the
oh,
70s.
let me see.
That's Bill Dundee right there. And the cool thing is, you get a free autograph on the back because obviously
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So this is like December 30th, 1978.
If you're not watching the video, he's got a huge stack of canceled checks of all the Memphis area. And I bet you, Tony, you'd sell them, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I've wanted to hold on to. There's several things that I still have here that are personally of value to me myself that I'll never get rid of. I told myself if the right offer came along for something like this, but obviously I'd split some of the money with Rooster. You know, man, do you remember Paul Neighbors Jr.? Not Paul Neighbors, the referee. His son, Junior.
I don't remember him. I know Paul, yeah.
Yeah. Paul Neighbors Jr., he was one of the interns. He was the intern, like in 92 on Memphis TV. Yeah. Jerry Jarrett was going through his attic, came across those and gave them to him. And he was like, I got these. David Milliken has the other half of them.
Oh,
David Milliken's got the other half that's got Hulk Hogan, Jerry Lawler's checks. I got Bill Dundee and every name that you can imagine passed through Memphis.
All right, guys. Tony, we're pinned on it. We're going to talk a little bit about a couple of things on Patreon. We're going to talk about is at Tony's show, I did two things that I've never done together at any other wrestling show ever. And I'll tell the story.
I know what they are.
Same bad time, same bad channel on the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there. And as everyone knows, and Tony knows this, I love my mama.
We are Memphis Wrestling. Join us live. Sunday, May 28th is our next free watch party at Dave & Buster's. Watch AEW Double or Nothing with us. It's free. That's Dave & Buster's in Memphis. Sunday, June 4th is our next live TV taping at the Wrestle Center. Experience the stars of Memphis Wrestling live. June 25th is on sale soon. Saturday, July 1st, watch WWE Money in the Bank with us. It's free at Dave & Buster's in Memphis. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours right now at championshipwrestlingmemphis.com.
Remember, all episodes, Memphis in May. Go to STSPod.club. Be there. This episode is also brought to you by SpunkLube.com. Remember, when you're getting funky like a monkey, if you know what I mean, use Spunky. That's right. Go to www.spunklube.com and tell them STSPod sent you. You want the best, you got the best. The best little wrestling podcast in the business. All episodes on www.stspod.club. Did you enjoy that episode? Cash App us at $BTSTS. If you've never downloaded the Cash App, download it today. You'll get a free, that's right, a free $5 for using the code $BTSTS. That's $BTSTS. Hey, that was another great episode of Shootin The Shiznit. Thank you for listening, and thank you to all our sponsors. A big shout out to Bob McGee at Pro Wrestling's Between the Sheets. Remember, you can reach us on Twitter at comicbookmarkbt, Instagram at BT Shootin The Shiznit. That's right, Shootin The Shiznit without a G. Facebook Shootin The Shiznit, and Facebook Cool Kids Wrestling and MMA Talk. If we don't like you in that group, first you have to ask to get in. If we don't like you, we'll kick you out. All the episodes are at one place, and that's www.stspod.club. Podcast Roll Call. Who's Right Podcast. Homeboys Podcast. P3 Radio, my buddies Richard and Josh. My World with Conrad Thompson and my friend Jeff Darren. Lance's favorite include Nickology, Rock Solid, Playlist Wars, I'm Fat Podcast. Hey guys, remember, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.